Bryce Young's throwing right now. Bryce Young's throwing right now. Just in case you're wondering, he looks good doing it, Tom. He looks good doing it. So I'm giving you information. What do you got for me on the latest here with all these pro days? What do you got for me?
It's one of the interesting trends here, and I didn't really realize this, Rich, was guys are doing shorter pro day throwing sessions this year. It used to be, it'd be 60 to 70 throws, and it would be these lengthy events. Bryce Young, I talked to his quarterbacks coach who's running it, Taylor Kelly, yesterday, and he said their script is like 45 to 50 throws. So it's going to start out, or did already start out with him just kind of doing some on-the-run type of stuff. They want to see him do some under center plant stuff, which he didn't do a lot in Alabama's offense. And then they want to get him into some of those show-off throws, which is, as much as I think that everybody who watched Alabama knows Bryce Young can get the football down the field, there's always something that scouts and coaches are looking for in terms of when they see somebody live, when they see him in person, how does the ball come out of their hands? And you're looking at a guy who's 5'10" and an 8. He was 204 at the combine. He played like at 186. What does it look like when he's chucking the ball down the field? And so as much as you're not answering maybe some of the questions about tape when it comes to throwing in person, there are some of those things the teams try to pick up on. And so Bryce Young obviously being below the line in terms of height, below the line in terms of his frame and his weight, is going to try to show today that he's well above the line in terms of how he throws that ball.
Well, a month ago, Tom, it was Bryce Young who was going to be the first overall pick as we were heading into the combine. And even with him not throwing at the combine, that gave you the sense that he's the first overall pick. That's what first overall picks do, is they don't throw at the combine. And then CJ Stroud threw at the combine. And then all of a sudden, Carolina trades up for the pick. And we're like, well, that's the prototype for Frank Reich, is CJ Stroud more than the height-weight conversation surrounding Bryce Young. Is that the general sense of things, or does Young flip the script with a nice pro day that we all expect? What do you think?
Well, I'll say this for the Panthers. They're doing the same process with everybody. They came into Columbus with the whole crew intact, David Tepper, his wife, Scott Fitter, Frank Reich, Thomas Brown, Josh McCown. I mean, they brought everybody on that thing, had dinner with CJ Stroud. Went to his workout. They're going to bring him into Charlotte for a private meeting prior to the draft. And then last night they went to Tuscaloosa. The same thing with Bryce Young. I'm told they're going to bring him in for a private meeting before the draft too. In other words, whatever ideas they have going into this, they're trying to be open-minded, go through the process, make sure that they're making the right decisions. I mean, it really comes down to the entire package with these guys. It's not just the size and the arm strength, it's the intangibles. It's how they are in the room, and they're getting a lot of personal time with them away from the field. I think that at this point, it would be a big surprise if Anthony Richardson somehow ends up being the number one pick. I think at this point, it would be a surprise if Will Levis ends up being the number one pick. That rarely narrows it to two players. But again, things can change over the coming month here and the weeks, and especially with the owner and the GM and the head coach all in the room and a completely new staff. It's a fascinating type of a dynamic here, knowing that there's four quarterbacks who quite possibly are going to be first-round picks, top 10, top 20 type of picks here. And it also has that trickle-down effect where you got Houston at 2, you got the Colts at 4, you got other teams like the Raiders that potentially at some point could draft one if the price is right. All these parts are interconnected, and it's also going to impact, can the Cardinals put number 3 up for bid at some point? Is there going to be a market to come up and get another one of these guys? It's the whole league. It's not just the Panthers. They just happen to be sitting at the top of the board.
So if Air Tepper doesn't make a stop tonight in Lexington to take Will Levis to dinner, then we know Levis is out of the running. Is that the way we got it for tonight? You want us to start calling around steakhouses to see if the Teppers have a party of 20 somewhere for a steakhouse tonight?
I'm pretty sure we'll know by tonight that they're going out to dinner with Will Levis.
Okay.
Again, they're trying to make this process the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But sure, I mean, I think that all that stuff matters. I mean, there's been times in past years, too, where somebody would go to every pro day except the guy that they're going to draft. So there's not as many smoke screens when you're sitting there at number 1, but I fully anticipate all these guys are going to go through the car wash, which also, by the way, they did this last year, too. The Panthers brought in all the quarterbacks last year. I want to say they had like the 6th pick, 6th or 9th. I want to say it was 6th. And they still did this. They brought everybody in.
Right.
They spent extra time with them. They didn't end up taking one up there. They waited until the 3rd round and took Matt Corral. but they wanted to fully vet everybody in case. And that comes from, Scott Fitterer was with John Schneider in Seattle. Schneider, for years, even when he's had Russell Wilson or when he was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, he's always gone to every top quarterback throwing session just because you want to know what plays in the league, because you want to know if all of a sudden there becomes a possibility 3 years later that Drew Lock's available in the trade, and you want to think back to what you thought of him at that time. And I think that fits kind of that same mold of you fully examine everything. But right now, I think it's, the difference is it's pretty obvious that they're taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
And number one, we just don't 100% know who it is.
Yeah, the Panthers took Ike Ekwonu in last year's draft, 6th overall for their offensive line. He's going to end up protecting whoever they draft this year. The Raiders at 7 had a pro day workout chat with Bryce Young. I mean, walk me through the thought process there. Is that due diligence in case Young could be possibly available 3rd overall after the Texans choose 2nd, and then they can make a trade up to go get him? Like, walk me through why something like that happens, as reported by our colleague Mike Garafolo this morning.
I heard the Raiders were also doing extra work with CJ Stroud. I think that they're another team that's in that position of wanting to make sure that they go through the entire process. I'd be surprised if the Raiders end up taking one at the top of the draft, because if you look at the details on Jimmy Garoppolo's contract, it really locks him in for 2 years here. Now, you could also say that if year one doesn't go great, and if you happen to have the right quarterback fall into your lap, then you could move on from Jimmy. Somebody else will pay him that money. So all those things are possible here. But, I don't think that you look at Jimmy Garoppolo either and say, well, we've got the quarterback for the next 10 years. The reality of his career is he's won a lot when he's been out there, but there have been plenty of times he's not been out there because he's had injuries. So to, continue to look to add to the room, again, I don't know if they're going to take one at number 7, and all these guys might be gone by 7. And I also think that there's also some gamesmanship that plays along the way too, where you want people thinking maybe you're a threat to take a quarterback, even if you're not taking one, just to try to make sure, let's say the Raiders don't want a quarterback here. The best case scenario for you is 4 of them go off the board and the 6 picks ahead of you, and one of those premier non-QBs drops into your lap.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.